You can? Okay, that's great. One second. Yeah. Will you sit anywhere?
Yeah, you guys can decide.
Where do you want to sit?
I think it's like,
Okay.
Okay, why don't we sit here? And Ron, are you on
Okay, you can sit. Yeah, yeah.
This way, we have enough space for each of us. Four.
Which can be very
Yes. Okay. That's the thing. Okay. Yes, and here. So we share the music. Yeah. Okay.
Hey guys, first of all, thank you so much for making it here today. We have a really exciting event ahead of us for you, and also a big thanks to all three of you for making it here. Yeah, so basically this is not a lecture or a sales pitch. This will be a conversation about AI agents and everything around it. We have a conversation exploring what AI agents really are, what they're capable of, and what they mean for us, technically, legally, and personally. So AI agents are systems that act with purpose in complex environments. They're increasingly planning, collaborating, and adapting, blurring the lines between automation and autonomy at this point in time. So a little bit about our speakers right here. Before that, if you're familiar with me, hi again. If you're not, my name is Vishnu, and I'm with the Machine Learning Club. So Ron right here is a former IBM Watson and cloud architect. He is now the CEO of Open Development, where he focuses on applied AI, cognitive frameworks, and enterprise architecture. Roma right here is the CEO of Crush Contracts and legal tech innovator. She focuses on contract automation, CLM systems, and humanizing legal AI. Abid right here is a PhD co-founder of Realix, and he's a professor of data science of graduate programs at the University of Chicago and Northwestern University. He works at the intersection of generative AI, product, wellness, and human-centered intelligence. So, thank you so much for making it.
Thank you.
So, we'll dive right in with a sort of question to test the waters with, what we're talking about for today. If someone with AI, someone who is unfamiliar with AI agents asks you, why should I care about this right now? What would you say in your own work? Where have you seen AI agents shift from being a concept to being something really useful for day-to-day purposes?
So, first of all, to answer your question, why should we care about AI agents? 2025 is considered to be the year of the AI agents, so we should look into what they are, how we can use it, just from where the IT industry is headed, and the world is ahead. So it is important, first of all. Second of all, where are we with it? So let me put it this way. So the AI engineers and LLMs and all these guys who are building models and products and things like that, they're still at sort of the edge of developing things. So if you're familiar with Cursor or any of these other tools, they're generating a lot of code. Can you put those code that they're generated directly into production? I doubt it. I would not. Right, let's put it that way. Having worked into enterprises for so long, working on very, very secure environments and very complex environments, So we're not quite there at the business level. There's a gap that exists between what the AI tools are producing today and the complexity of the business. And that's one of the things we are trying to address. We're building some products, as I told you. So yeah, we're building ResearchNet, and we'll build some products, hopefully bridge those gaps.
Definitely. We're at the precipice of something, a lot of interesting things. So that's really awesome to hear. We'd love to hear you guys' thoughts as well.
I think that I hear this a lot in the legal field of like where it's at and how it's still developing. But the reality is, depends on who you are. If you are a tech, expert, an AI expert, you will look at this and think, oh, it's in the beginning, but it's not useful for enterprise. But if you are an admin, if you are a paralegal, if you are some, legal secretary, it is very useful because it's automating a lot of the mundane, tasks that you would need more time to do. So where it's at depends on who you are and what kind of work you do. At one of the Gen AI collectives, Tanya, an attendee once said that a lot of the strategic decisions in companies are made by males or top level people. They come up with the ideas and then they pass it down. And then who does it end up with, right? The clerks, the admins, and they have to do all the reporting, all the generating, then printing things and all. So AI agents helps them automate so much work that they themselves have an AI assistant now. So I think it's in a good place already for many people who are making a big use of it. For them, it's life-changing already.
That's a really interesting perspective.
So, why should we care? I tell people if you're technical or non-technical, it's like itself, you need to know it, whether you like it or not. Because it's becoming part of your day, be it personal or professional, you need to know AI agents, either how to build them or how to use them. And it's not new actually. I remember a few years ago I was working at IQ, and one of our customers is a very, very large oil company, and it would take them about 18 months to find a location. They can basically drill a well for oil, and with our technology, it was taking them 2 weeks. Things were.
Yeah, there's a lot of automation and human-centric assistance coming up in the industry. So that is definitely something that's cool and interesting to both work on for us as engineers and also for customers that we're serving in the industry. That was really cool. So starting off, I would like to ask Ron this. So you've built mission critical systems for God knows how many years. How is agentic thinking shifting the way we approach enterprise systems today? Because there is a lot of change happening every day on a daily basis, and it's really difficult for us to keep up at a certain point, because there's a child in Croatia coming up with the latest algorithm, and then next thing you know, there's something really cool happening in Latin America, and it's like there's a lot of cool developments. And what are the hard questions no one is asking yet, really? So this would be like a really cool opportunity for you to talk about how your work is also being a part of the innovation. So we'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And great that some kid in Croatia is coming up with the latest algorithm. That's democratization of IT and LLMs and every sort of thing. I love that. And I would be more than happy to use this algorithms if it works better than some of the algorithms I'm using. But on that note of enterprise level code, right? So that's where I see the gap from a technical perspective, because so to me, the AI agents is the next level of automation. So we're trying to automate things forever, right? So from the creation of functions to encapsulate code and call that function over and over again, to object-oriented programming, to automation, process automation, and all that stuff. This is just the next level of automation to me, right? Using AI in the mix. So now, as Avid and Ron was saying, we can now easily find out information about many things very, very quickly. Like even if you're talking about some basic tools like Notebook LM, right? So from Google. Great tool, right? You can put up to 50 documents and do a question and answer from it. So that is amazing, right? So it'll take me like weeks to go through those documents to understand it, all that stuff. But what is the next level from that, right? Can we actually understand the document? We're not quite there yet. So we need knowledge bases and things like that behind the scene to be able to do that and then query the knowledge base to understand the relations and the entities and the intent of what is in those documents. So that is the next level of stuff we need to look into. And then from there, can we actually get to the point of enterprise level code? Not just sample code and where's the code coming from. It's a gray area right now, so we need to get to that point, yes, and AI can definitely assist. I really believe AI agents is going to revolutionize the next stage of automation.
That's really interesting because, like you mentioned, the gray area. There's a lot of conversation and debates around the ethicality and morality of the way models are built every day. And on a day-to-day basis, as engineers, this is also something that we really consider from our engineering perspective. But from a legal perspective, for Roma right here, we'd love to learn more about this in the sense that in law, precision, empathy, and trust are really critical. So where do you see AI agents contributing without stripping away the human side? Essentially, like what excites you as well? Because what makes you stop and think about the work you're doing, and where do you see things going in the horizon? Really, because this would also be like a really cool way for us to learn more about what you do.
Okay, what I'm about to say might surprise many of you. I grew up in the 80s. I believe the role of robots and Jarvises and having a fully automated world with everything run by computers does not scare me. And I think that I'm looking forward. I'm surprised it's still not here yet. So I want to clarify some things. It's interesting that you brought that up. Let me remind you guys, when you see the Lady Justice with scales, her eyes are blindfolded. So you have, people think there's empathy and human touch and all that in law, but the fact is, there isn't. We make laws to be black and white. We want to apply them black and white. It's at the sentencing time, we think about empathy, how long should the sentence be? So I think there's a misunderstanding about, it won't replace lawyers, it has this human touch, but that's not true. Most of law has to be applied as is. When you pass the laws, you need empathy. When you apply the sentencing, you need empathy, but when you're actually applying the law, you don't. That's why justice is blind. So I want to clarify that when you bring AI, it's actually doing what humans sometimes don't do. Sometimes humans use empathy or biases to not apply law as it's supposed to be. And I think that having AI in law is the right thing to do. Now, will there be misapplications of it? Yes, absolutely. The AI training right now is very, very new. It doesn't account for all the circumstances. And I think once we continue, as we continue to train it, it will become better at it. So law is really big. It's not just contracts, and contracts are actually not legal documents. They're business documents. There's big controversy in the legal world when I say that. So when you take out contracts, you look at criminal justice, juvenile justice, you're talking about regulation and compliance, most of those areas, you need to apply things as is, right? So I think AI there is really good. Where you need to humanize AI is really training it on the sense of the sentencing portion. If you're looking at pre-law passing, if let's say legislators are starting to use AI, in that case, we need to start thinking about and worrying about what are the biases they're bringing in. So I look at that, I humanize contracts, I like to humanize technology because it's just easy to interact with, ultimately, right? We've had bots, we have had algorithms, we have had expert systems, you put something, it spits something out, right? Calculators can do that too. But when you have this new type of agentic AI, it's conversational. It makes you feel like there's a person behind you, right? But does that change the actual calculation? Does that actually change the output? No. So I think that there's a little bit of a confusion there, and I can have the unpopular sentiment of it doesn't matter. The whole human touch in law doesn't matter. It's not supposed to matter for most of it, but beyond that. I think the ethics portion, you can talk about it for a bit, and we can come back to that.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you. Well, actually, yes, I agree in terms of when it comes to logic, right?
Yeah.
You can use agents, right? But when it comes to emotions and empathy, you have to use the being, like sentencing. So, in my opinion, I'm a data guy. I've been working data for 25 years, right? So, when I teach data engineering, also I teach ethics, ethics in AI and data. I think the most important thing for us is to make sure that the data is secure. Like if you see now all these companies are going through lawsuits, that they use my data. Well, you never asked my permission. I think if we can, two ways. One, secure the data that we are generating as a person. Many people may not even know what is happening to the data. Second, educate people that if you are generating data, somebody is going to use it. What you can do about it. So I think those are the aspects where we can educate human beings so that the bots can do their job.
Can I add to that? So I want to talk about that a little bit, right? What is the harm in people using your data? There's a false sense of privacy on ownership of data, but we're all out there taking photos, posting things, talking about where you eat, what you do. My data is being used, and I get pushed the best sales for clothes and shoes, figured out by Facebook that I like to buy shoes and dresses. So every 2 months, I get the best sales, and I buy the best price, and guess what? Within a week, that sale is gone. So I'm okay with my data being used for it to provide the best service for me, right? So I think the question is, generic ideas of like, oh, is it ethical to use data? I think like, but what kind of data and for what purpose? So we have already given away so much personal data already, and we cannot take it back unless we completely get off the grid, and that's not possible. So the reality of it is, and I ask this, this is where I think people in the world and professors have to have a conversation about, yeah, you're right, ethically you're saying, don't give your data, but how is that possible? So we have to keep that in account.
All right. So I tell people, actually yesterday my lecture was about this. I tell people it's just like, how do you prepare human beings forward? How do you advance humankind, right? Technology. So when it comes to medicine, you can donate your blood for research. You can donate your cells. If people have certain disease, very rare, they can donate their cells for advancing their research, right? But as long as the person knows what they're doing, right? Without permission, using data, I think that is unethical. And there are laws for it.
There are, but there is a limitation to knowing what's going to happen. I think there is a difference between organic material being donated like your cells versus, again, when we talk about data, what are we talking about? Are you talking about my medical data that was from the medical records? There's different restrictions and laws versus who I am, what is my height, what do I like to eat, so data itself also needs to be categorized into how private it is, how important it is, how critical it is, right? And ultimately, even if my data is being used, I think the only reason I'm going to get mad is because if you're making money from it and I'm not.
Yeah.
Otherwise, who cares, right? So I think we have to evolve laws around monetizing someone's data. And then again, I think what ends up happening is people say, oh, data is being stolen, GDPR is passed, CCPA is passed, crazy big losses. And it ends up creating unnecessary work for lawyers, right? And this is where I think AI is fine, because unnecessary, repetitive, I have to send so many letters to every single vendor every time there's a GDPR update. Because they said, now you need to add this clause in the contract, right? It's adding extra work. So then we start to lose focus on what data are you protecting and why. So when we pass laws too, we have to not think from emotion this time and think from practicality to say, I don't want an illusory protection, a fake protection law around data, but I want to know exactly where. So I think having these conversations on a regular basis will help.
Yeah.
And also, that's an interesting point actually. What data? So some of the data you refer to are public data,
Yeah.
right? It's already out there, right? So whether you like it or not, your picture is everywhere, right? So I have a professor who wants to, he's the only person to see on my website whose picture I don't have, right? Right, so like, hey, Jeremy, can you give me your picture? Like, no, I've spent my life trying to stay away from public pictures, even the university site doesn't have this picture. So like, okay, you can have your privacy. So if you look at my sign-up form, I have a little checkbox in there. Do you want your picture to be published or not? Well, I need your name if I have to give you a certificate. I mean, if you don't want the certificate, then you don't need to share that information with me. That's fine. But there's some basic things you have to share to get certain things done, right? And then there's public information. Public information is already out there. That's how Google built Google Earth, right? From public information, which is already there, satellite data and all that stuff, which no one is actually aware of. They just put it together, right? And that's fine. But if it's private, like the blood samples or something, now it's a concern, right? Now my genomics data, this is another problem, right? So 24andMe and I think 24andMe is having problems, but the other one, what's it called? Ancestry, right? Oh, everyone wants your DNA to analyze this or that. I don't know how good they are, but now they have a genetic marker which I cannot change. It's even worse than SSN, stealing my SSN, right? So where are they going? Where is it getting stored? It's a concern. It's not a government entity, right?
So, this is a very passionate topic, so I think we're talking about it earlier. And I think about that. I did test on Ancestry.com. I didn't do 23andMe because I thought they were a little too startup-y. They reminded me of Theranos. But that's a good point. Again, I'm one of those people that I'm a person of science. I will dedicate my life to it. I will give my body to it. So I look at it, my mentality is a little bit different. Because what am I really saving it for, right? Where it starts to come down to, again, is what type of data. Is government collecting data on me? Is it sharing with them? That's when I start to get concerned, right? If it's a matter of, hey, we're generically collecting data to create a genome or like have a understanding of human behavior, fine. But I do have a problem with government and government collecting our data, controlling us, surveilling us. So that's where the line is drawn, in my opinion. And we have to think about, like, there's a family of 4, they have a 10-year-old daughter. Okay, so far innocent, we should market this product to them. But what else do they know about these kids? How else can this be, what if it's stolen? What if it gets in the hands of the wrong people? So the question is, again, we start to look at what is the data. I like what you said, where is it stored?
Exactly.
Who's accessing it? That's where it starts to get, that's what it is.
Exactly. So my view is slightly different, right? I'd rather trust the government more than a private company, right? and have some regulations around it, right? Because if there's no regulation, hey, how do we protect the data anyways, right?
But see, here's the thing, right? Government is still made of people. And the difference between a private entity and a government is government has more power. A private entity, you can destroy them through your wallet. The government always has more power. So I'm going to remind somebody, I'm going to ask you guys a question. What do you think is the purpose of the Constitution? Any answers? What's the purpose of the Constitution?
To protect people.
To serve the people.
Serve the people, protect the people? No. The purpose of the Constitution is to limit the government. It's not about, we already have the power, but the government will always try to increase this power. Look at what's happening right now in all the countries. So the purpose, we have to create laws to limit the government's power. That's why I will never trust the government with my information. You should always, be wary of the government. Private entities we can control. Government, once it has it, you will not get that power back.
So, I really don't really care about people taking my data.
I don't care about people.
Yeah, and this is like, so my wife is not tech. She's an accountant. She uses this app called Fetch. Anybody has seen it?
Yeah.
And like I said, I've been working in tech for a very long time. I've built the system, recommendation engines and everything, right? And every time she buys something, she scans the app. And I'm like, of all the people, you are doing it, your husband does this thing, right? But now that data is useful because they are storing it, they are seeing, okay, certain patterns happen. People buy these things in certain part of the country and can help. I'm going back to the government, right? So what kind of data we should protect? Is the PII data, personal identifiable data, right? And there are HIPAA and all of these laws are there. But when it comes to government, I feel the government should have access to certain data because if there is a crime, they should be able to find through these, let's say, videos, audios and videos and everything, right? Limited, right?
Limited purpose.
That access is good, right? But whether it is government or private entity, as long as they educate people that this is the data I will be gathering about you, people should know. It should not be 1,000 pages document for them to read just information, right?
And I am guilty of that. I'm a contracts lawyer, and one of my purposes in life is to reduce contracts. I have come up with this app called Global NDA. So if you guys are starting startups, please opt in.
Yes.
The goal is you don't have to sign 100 NDAs, you just opt into one. And my goal is to create regulation around that, so we don't have to sign these 1,000-page terms and conditions. It just becomes ethically acceptable and a normal thing. But unfortunately, that is not going to change. When you look at the history of the world, the way power works is like a small number of people will always want to control it. First it was with land, with money, now it's with data, and that's how this works. So think about what, it's not a commodity in which you think it is. It is what gives people power. That is what our people are using now in tech to become powerful, right? So it is important for us to protect it. There is a level of, you can't stress and be anxious about every level of data that's out there, but what you're saying is correct, is we need to know why it's being used. And for that reason, law has to be simplified. And I'm going to come back to the AI piece to say, I think that AI will help simplify.
That was really good because we went through a lot of different tangents and they were all really, hitting the point of our discussion today because a lot of us, we've heard from huge tech companies over the years about quote unquote, making the world a better place. That's a phrase that has been loosely thrown around by a lot of companies in the past. But I believe that some of us in this room, we do really believe in working, together to actually, in fact, make the world a better place. So those were some really interesting perspectives that you guys shared, and it was really awesome watching you guys discuss it through. A little bit about the work that Abhi does right here. I wanted to ask you this. Your work on enhancing human potential with AI is something that you do with your startup, and I believe you also have these core principles and ideas that you share with your students at your Chicago and Northwestern. So we're curious. So in a world of increasingly autonomous agents, what does it mean to design systems that still keep people at the center for you? Because there are a lot of things that could go wrong and sideways very quickly just because one engineer or one person working on the safety module did not think of an edge case. So how do you think this plays into the larger picture?
So technology is a means to an end, right? We invented technologies, we invented wheel, so that we can do things easier, planes, cars, and today the new technologies are artificial intelligence. I think if you put human at the center of your design, then no matter what technology you design, it will always be for the technology. In my opinion, when we design our system, we actually talk to the potential users who will be using our technology or who have used certain technology in the past. What are they concerned? Try to understand that, how people will use it. Because at the end of the day, it is people who are going to use the technology. They are going to drive the car. Even if it's an honest car, people are going to see the car. So human-centric design was most important in this design, and then we get that people.
That's definitely something to keep in mind. because as engineers, I believe we're all from different backgrounds in computer science and maybe applied math even right here. So we're familiar with the fact that a lot of things can go wrong when working with mission critical projects. So that's something that you really do need to keep in mind when you're working on large scale systems within your self-led projects, or even when you're working for different companies. So that's really cool. I wanted to ask this as a general question for all of you guys. What makes AI agents fundamentally different from traditional automation or software systems you've worked with in the past? Because like we've mentioned before in this discussion, there's a lot of new things coming in every day, and we don't quite know what we're dealing with until we've passed a certain point in time of making and using that product. So what do you think about all this?
So AI agents, as you just mentioned, it's a new paradigm, right? It's an evolving thing. It's new products are coming out every day. I hear announcements, and you should too. Just monitor 2025. You should monitor the word AI agents. There's last week the Next conference, Google Next conference. Vishnu was there. And I was independently looking at what they were doing, and they came out with something called ADK, Agent Development Kit. Obviously, I'm looking at more of the development perspectives and things like that, and more technical stuff, but it is all evolving, right? So if you look Google, for instance, what are AI agents, you'll get several definitions, right? To me, it's really three things. One, obviously it has to use some AI model. It can be LLM, it can be a reinforcement learning model or some other model, but it has to use, or else it's not an AI agent, obviously, right? Second thing, it should have the ability to invoke one or several tools. So a single model might not be able to give you an answer to everything, so you have to invoke tools to enrich it. So it has to have that capability. And the third, you have to have some output development, right? You cannot just throw data into it and then it disappears. It has to give you some answer. Now, some answers, some people would say it's a decision. Not all agents will give you a decision factor. Like if I'm summarizing text, it's not a decision, but it is a great thing that LLMs do. It's like I was referencing like notebook LLM, right? Just load document, summarize it, or my assistant for Zoom is always on. If you've been on my Zoom, right? It does excellent summarization. That is something that they're very, very good at, right? We're already there. Now, certain other things, okay, so I want the weather of, say, New York at this particular time. It does not have the hard data, so you need to invoke a tool that will give you the data, and then you put it in words, which LLMs does very well. It is, at the end of the day, a language model, and we should always treat it as a language model. Now, other things like gamification sort of things, like chess or some other, say a car, a driverless car, they can be agents. They're just different types of agents. A reinforcement learning agent can actually see and predict which way you want to go and score it and so on and so forth. So it has to have an agent, it has to have the capability of running tools, and it has to give you some output that you can further call another agent with. Now Google has come up with AQA protocol, so that's one way. I still think it's very, very thin of a protocol. I will be putting much more complexities into it in the future, but it's a way of communication now between agents. There's also another protocol called MCP, Model Context Protocol, and that is becoming the de facto standard, and Google is now supporting it for communication between these tools and the agent. So these are capabilities that agent must have.
I actually have a question, and somebody long doesn't do, what is the difference between the assistant and agent? Because we're now hearing about agentic AI. There's AI agents, which I always thought were really AI systems, right? This is the way they're evolving. So can you clarify that for me?
Take that.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, adding on to that, that was a good question.
Because the terminology
Yeah.
keeps getting reused,
Yeah.
and I want to make sure that we're understanding.
Yeah, definitely. Because as AI agents get more autonomous, where do you like draw the line between what they should do and what they can do? Adding on top of that question.
I'll answer that part first and then speaking of traditional automation, it was rule-based. You give certain instructions and then the system follows that. So you think of assistant is basically that. If you look at ChatGPT of the 2024 and before then, basically it is a knowledge system in the backend and it's very quick at search. What it's doing is it's looking for information that you ask and it's converting into a conversation.
Yeah.
That's all it's doing, right? It's a nice way of presenting the whole information. So an assistant is actually helping you achieve certain goal, like you were saying about, right? An agent is autonomous. It has the ability to perform a task on behalf of you. Now it can have the ability to make a decision or not make a decision. That is where your question comes in, right? Where do we draw the line? Okay, if it is booking my travel, maybe I don't want my agent to do that for me. Because what if my credit card has been stolen, right? If I want it to create contacts for me, this is a boring task, yeah, go for it, right? So wherever I think there is a, yeah, that's the whole idea of technology. Technology is created to make human life easier, right? So if we are thinking about artificial intelligence, it is basically intelligence that we have created, and the idea is to make our life easier. So these monotonous activities, when they are automated with an assistant, they are just automated. But if you actually do an action on them, like once you write these contracts, then you send it to ROM. Now that's an activity an agent can do that. The entire workflow can be automated through agents. The ability to make a decision should be with human beings when it involves human beings.
Definitely, I definitely agree with that because with mission critical systems, there have been instances in the past where research and development teams have hard-coded a lot of logic into building these really complex AI systems that do tasks autonomously, but you never know what's out there in your environment when you're running it in the real world outside your testing environments. So that's something that I really agree with.
I really like how you presented that, because when you think about this, the reason why I asked that was like when you go to the next level of this, the supply of this surgery, let's say somebody's on life support, and AI can determine this person's, this human being's potential to live, how long, but should it make a decision if you should terminate this life? So that's where we have to, as human beings, as society, start making those lines, those distinctions now. It can't come to the point where technology can do it, and then suddenly we're trying to figure out where the line is. But the ethical conversations around AI shouldn't be at the base level of automation. Oh, should it be replacing jobs? I think the difficult conversation is coming. Should the AI make the decision, like what we talked about, right? You applied the law, you did the research, you got promotions, but somebody's convicted. Should AI do that, or should human beings do that? Because human beings also have biases. I mean, think about 50 years ago, our justice system wasn't always the greatest, like the jury was not always fair. But we have come to a good point now. And now I worry, do we give the jury responsibility to AI? Do we give the decision-making part? So those questions are really the strong ethical questions we should start thinking about now.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of nuance involved with all of these issues discussed here today, so that is definitely something I agree with.
I was just going to say the same thing that, I think all decisions require human beings, right? So those decisions should never be given to artificial intelligence. But the idea of collecting all this data, when you are doing research on a case, actually I was speaking to a friend of mine today, he runs a very large law firm. He said it takes us 60 days to do research, basic research, when we start a case. Imagine those 60 days converting to 60 minutes or even 6 minutes. So when it comes to data analysis, gathering and synthesizing the data, artificial intelligence can help with that part. But then making decisions like jury and doctor and life and death decision, you actually be the human being.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I wanted to add to that was about ethics, right? So we're also not perfect, right? So ethics, if you look at history, has evolved over time, right? Look at the oldest written law code ever, Hammurabi's tablet, right? In the Sumerian Empire. Well, eye for an eye comes from there, right? So what is the justice system? If someone pokes your eye, you just go and poke his eye. If someone pokes your son's eye, you go and poke not him, but his son's eye, which makes absolutely zero sense. Okay?
It used to back then.
It used to back then, because ethics has evolved over a period of time. So human beings are also evolving, and even the AI is basically based on what human beings are feeding them, right? So we have to be aware of biases. We can actually check biases at a much more data-centric level now. Since we are training the AIs, there are some tools to check for biases. Human biases is even harder to check, right? So I can have a hidden bias towards someone, and I can give a decision based on my bias. How would you ever know? How would you check? How would you check the? You can check some backgrounds of the jury. You don't know what's on their mind. It's the hidden bias is the most difficult thing to understand, and some of it is actually hidden in the polls. That's why the polls always don't tell you the right thing, right? So you have biases, you act in a different way. When you're asked, you act in a different way.
So I think that there are two things about it, right? Now that you're saying it that way, actually using AI in this, you can prove the bias because you actually have the data in the background to see how it was trained. Human beings, we wouldn't
Yes,
know.
exactly.
I could look like a very nice person, but I could be a bigot. You don't know that, right? But actually AI, because it's data, we can look in the back end. But I want to come back to the health and justice system thing. I want the younger generation here to think about this. We can talk about the ethics of, I'm going to go back to the person on life support example. You know what controls that is the insurance company. So the health insurance company is not going to want to pay for this person's life support. What will they do to eliminate that cost? They're going to find a way to build that AI decision making into our lives. So we can sit here and dislike it. We can say it's not ethical. We can talk about the laws, but before we know it, watch. It is going to be implemented in insurance companies because their machine is built to make as much money as possible without human care. They say they care, but they don't. I mean, look back in the history of it. So I want to think of the real impact of this is happening while we're still talking about it. When you get to those decision-making places, when you're building these solutions out in the world, you think about who is actually going to use this, right? And the most powerful people in the world do not care. They will take access and they will say, all right, well, we've decided this is how we're going to determine the life support and the lives of people. So I do worry about that piece and who ends up, implementing it. And if they have strong lobbies, think about that, right? They'll go to the Congress and they'll have these laws passed and we can't do anything about it.
That's why, one quick note. That's why. So just analyzing the data is a great idea, but the data might not be open, right? So to build these systems on open data and make it open source is very, very important.
Yeah.
If it involves public decisions, right, like life support or some company, right, I can have my own data hidden behind the store with whatever sort of data in it. How will someone analyze it? Opening up is the key to this.
Right. Build tools that take down the bad tools.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, this is an ethical conversation that we can do for hours and hours, right? I'm a big fan of movies. I watch a lot of movies. So I've seen a lot of movies about Terminator killing people. Then I've also seen very, very good movies out there. So very recently a movie came out in Apple called. Has anybody seen it? Right? So going back to Ron's point that there's a saying that you are what you eat, right? So these machines that we are building today, they are like a children. And you raise your child with care, but you also pass on your values to them. So when we are training these systems, we have to be very, very careful that what bias we are passing on to them. The reason I'm giving example of Chappie is that Chappie is raised by this person, Tom Hanks, and then Tom Hanks teaches him that you should take care of my dog after I'm gone. And then Tom Hanks dies, and Chappie takes care of his dog. So to answer your question and then maybe to add to that, yes, we have to have good actors in society to control the bad actors. Today we have the police, in the future we will have agents that will be controlling these things.
Yes. And there can be adversarial agents as well, right? So whenever there's a good thing, whenever you absolutely need cops. So whenever you try to do something good, even with best intentions, the same technology can be used as adversarial effects, and that goes with AI as well.
I want to add one more thing. So going back to your life decision, right? There are 40 countries in the world that actually allows people, it is, I forgot the name of the law, but it is basically, euthanasia, right? So depending on the country, I think these systems will be allowed to do it, right? But if the law of the country doesn't allow euthanasia, then insurance companies will be held accountable.
Well, I think it was a matter of the decision, right? So if a family member is having a very hard time, the algorithm can come out, an agent can come out and say, the decision, this is the decision. And how do you then impact somebody's, it's the power of suggestion. It's that when a doctor comes to you and says, it's too late, you can keep your father on life support for 20 more years, or you can make that call. It's a very hard decision a family member has to make. Now imagine if there was an app that said, I'll make the decision for you. And all you have to do is relying on my data and my thinking, now the decision has been easier. So I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that point will come where a lot of the decision making that you were talking about may be entrusted in the agents, and that could be coming from the insurance companies for monetary reasons. And so how do we prevent that? I don't know. I mean, like we said, some laws might allow it, but is it just because it's legal doesn't make it right? Right? And laws can be passed for other purposes, besides the reasons.
So to add to that, there is an idea of accountability, right? Who is accountable? If the autonomous car is running into somebody and killing somebody, am I accountable because I own the car, right? So these agents, if they are going to kill these people, the hospital is accountable.
Why would they be accountable?
There will be a law for that because they own it.
No, I mean, right now, you can, if you decided to pull the plug for your family member, it's not a crime.
If the machine is supposed to plug without their permission, then there's a crime.
But if you have given, that's what I'm saying, the way these things have become part of our lifestyle, they're slowly giving it that autonomy, right? So there comes a point where, if I've signed away something, if I know this app, let's say they build an app that's your sympathy app throughout a sick family member's journey. Somebody's gonna do it. And you start talking to this app, you start sharing your feelings, your family's, health condition is dropping, and this thing is supporting you in a humanistic way. You become friends with it, and then it ultimately says, I think this is the right decision, pull the plug. And you may turn around and say yes. So the decision came from the agent that you've now already become codependent on. There is an app that they recently called The Death of a Teen. It was an avatar app. It created this persona, and this teen became very good friends with it, and ultimately told him to kill himself. Right? So you think about the kind of codependency humans have on humans and inanimate objects, including apps. That's where I'm saying. You're saying that there's no permission, but what if you somehow gave permission to the app?
So, see, it goes back to the point I was making earlier, right? You raise your children with certain values, right? These machines we are becoming dependent on every single day. In the future, if a machine, like today, like you gave the example of a doctor, right? And actually last year, very, very close to have cancer, okay? Because in October of 2023, he was diagnosed with stage cancer 4, right? And the family and the doctors decided in November that they are not going to do any treatment. So for 7 months I was going and being with him and his family every single day, single time, right? Because they did not want to do the treatment. The only treatment they were doing was painkillers, so that he is not in pain. And I was there the moment he died. I think we as a human being, we have to be responsible for such decision making. We have to be accountable. A machine should not be given the option to execute. Like, there's no way. And if there's codependency created because of these machines, that is where education comes in. We have to educate people. This is at the end of the day, it's a machine, it's not a human being.
Yeah, so I want to add a couple of things to that. Okay. So first of all, AI is influencing me. My friend can also influence me. It's the same thing to me, right? An agent is like a friend. So my friend can say, hey, he's going through so much pain, just pull the plug, right? And I can take his word for it, right? Now, where is the data point? So I can only look at things pragmatically from a data perspective, right? Everything else is emotional and very hard to judge. So we can look at it from, first of all, the data has to be open, so I can see what data it's taking its decision on, right? The other factor is we can also monitor someone's brain as they're in a comatose state, right? And it's getting better and better. So we can understand whether he is able to recover at some point or not, right? So that data should also be considered, which I don't think anyone is considering at this point, but that is a data that should be considered of the actual brain health of the patient who can be removed, right? And can respond because the brain is alive. And
But see, with all of that, ultimately, so you brought the point of your friend and the AI. The question comes down to why. Why would your friend tell you? What's the gain? What's what? If your friend is uninterested and says, this is what you should do. Or you can say, I can see you suffering. I can see you're sad. This is why you should do. And then the agent, who controls the agent? Who's controlling that AI? Again, is it the insurance company? Is it the hospital? Who is going to benefit from that decision? You always have to ask the why behind all of this, right? So when we say we should allow human beings, why? In some cases, maybe humans are not the best people to make the decisions, right? So always ask the why behind the what. And it's not always so black and white and clear. Sometimes maybe biases may be holding humanity back from progress, and AI agents can give a very unbiased answer based on calculations. But a lot of times, you know, when you think about, I'm giving one example of life support. What if it turns into, data says that if a subset, like I'm Indian background, I grew up in Saudi Arabia, I lived in India and I came out here, but I do remember what the Indian population situation is, right? And you've got these areas that are full of slums and of people, poor people living a certain way. What if data said that this should just be eliminated? I mean, all we have to do is find a peaceful way to get rid of them, and then, you know, then we can solve this problem. What if it comes to that point because data, AI doesn't know, it's not thinking from emotions, it's giving it that output. So then I start to worry about these types of decisions that impact humanity at a large scale like that.
You remind me of Thanos actually. Thanos was eliminated half the universe without any discrimination.
Right?
Just do it.
Yeah.
I just want to make that
I'm not pro that, just so you know.
no, but we were just having a discussion yesterday. So if any of you have joined my open development calls, we digress to whatever at some point. So one of the discussions we got into is population explosion, right? Like, okay, just look at yesterday's call actually. Just look at how our population has increased. Like now we're 8 billion plus in the world, right? And if you look at the graph, it's pretty much flat, very slowly growing until it comes to a point in 1900, and then it shoots up. Then after 2000, it just has shot up like crazy, right? What is the reason? One of the reason is medicine, yes. The other reason is controlling of the wars. A lot of people were dying in the wars as well. And the post World War II era with UN and all these, right? So we have decreased the number of deaths. And obviously, we have had very good weather conditions, very stable weather conditions, which has not been for a long time. There's other reasons. Yeah, it's very, very stable actually, if you think about it in the bigger history of the world. So there are many factors, but is it sustainable? No, it is not sustainable if we grow like this. So at some point, this whole system is going to break down because of just poverty is one reason. It's gonna explode at some point, right? And then who knows what's going to happen.
It is all definitely a black box, and as engineers we understand that we mean well when we build these systems, but to a certain extent we need to realize that, you know, we're sitting right here in an air-conditioned room in really comfortable seats, and there's a whole different side of the world where this is not the reality for a lot of people involved that are getting affected by the systems that we build and the systems that we maintain, for that matter. So taking that black box situations into consideration, it is definitely a big deal for you to maintain ethical boundaries within what you build and also ensure that you're working with people for people, essentially.
And I may add this, like, I built a couple of products, and I find this very interesting with engineers. They love building things, right? And I always say, like, just because you can doesn't mean you should. Because you figured out a way to add a new feature. You know, there's a good documentary on Netflix that came out 4 years ago about how they designed Facebook and social media to attract eyeballs, and especially young teens, right? So people who developed that notification feature that pops up, they finally quit Facebook and Pinterest because they said this was now being used to mention, you know, and the impact on the teens is terrible, right? So as engineers, I say, you know, just because you can, and it's a challenge from the scientists, like, oh, I know I can do this, I'm gonna keep exploring and building. But also think about whose hands it might land into. And that's really where the strong ethical control comes in. And true, some Dr. Evil out there will be like, I'll do it, you know, and they'll build it and they'll monetize it, but at least as engineers who are building things, I think that you can think about it from that perspective, or maybe slow it down a little bit, or build it with some checks and balances, you know?
I was about to open the floor for questions from the audience, but you can add one.
So, speaking of checks and balances, you know, like I said, I watch a lot of movies, and we have my class, I have a lot of references to movies. So, Spider-Man's aunt or people say is great power and great responsibility, right? So yes, checks and balances, we will have to build them. And I am somebody who considers myself as techno-positive. You know, if you ever see my videos, they're all about positive influence of technology. I believe in technology is a means to an end, and it is the person who is creating the technology, they are responsible for making it do certain things. If you guys see again Marvel, Ultron, Age of Ultron, right? Ultron comes and he actually wants to make the world a better place. In his mind, he thinks that the world right now is not good. And he says one thing, that there is no change on me. I will do whatever I want, right? And then that Ultron is converted into Jarvis towards the end of the movie. And Jarvis is a very kind person, he can even carry, you know, Thor's hammer. So the idea is that the difference between the two of them was, if you look at Ultron, he's Iron Man's brain, he's his mind. Too much ego, right? But Jarvis has his heart, too much emotion and empathy. So I think when you're designing these systems, think about human beings, because human beings are going to use these technologies, right? Keep this principle in mind that you are responsible for making these decisions and you should make them better.
Definitely, that's a really good perspective that I agree with as well. If you guys in the audience have any questions you want to ask any of us, the floor is open.
I see a hand right here.
So, as you talked before, like you talked about the emotional kind of things. Is there any possibility to make those kind of like emotional intelligence to put inside those LLMs nowadays? Like, is there any architecture to develop? Because I heard about one of the ways is to have like train the model together with the like computer vision kind of approach. And yeah.
So there's a concept called human in the loop, right? So when we started our startup a couple of years ago, we were building something for leadership development, and the idea was that how you can actually convert a life coaching into a part. So I'm a certified life coach as well, trained and certified, right? So the idea of human in the loop was that when we were training, her name is Athena, I named her. So we were training Athena. I was spending a lot of time with Athena. Right? I was training her constantly with my prompts and everything. And the data we were providing, you know, we were actually getting permissions from people that I was coaching and recording those conversations. And at the end of the day, when people started using Athena, they said, it's like I'm talking to you, right? So you can bring that by bringing human into the aspect.
Yeah, I'll add something to that. Even before LLMs, we had sentiment analysis, right? So sentiment analysis has been there for a long time. Okay, so and there's some work we were trying to do. I had a project called Nectar. I kind of paused it for now. Not just sentiment analysis of what you speak, but there's also factors. There's neurotransmitters in the brain that can be monitored to see how you're feeling, how people are feeling around you. And then there's indirect ways of knowing what the neurotransmitters are doing inside your brain. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So I guess I always get a lot of dopamine shots in the brain. I'm always excited, but you cannot probe inside my brain and see how much dopamine is getting generated, right? So how do you know? There's some studies in green monkeys actually that the higher the dopamine level, it affects your blinking rate, your involuntary blinking rate of the eye. So there's other ways of monitoring this. Say I have a phone app, right? I'm monitoring how you're blinking, right? So you're doing stuff, it can be done. So you can do sentiment analysis even without LLMs, right? So there are other models that can do a lot of these things, and maybe they can be packed into agents, and we can connect other things to it. So that's just one example. There's lots of other things that can be done. These brainwave stuff that I was referring to, when someone is in a comatose state, a lot of those can be analyzed now, right? And we're getting better.
I think you can also, like, even before you get to the brain, like keystroke speeds, right? When somebody's upset, they're like typing quickly. If they have a lot of typos coming in, if they're saying a curse word over and over. So I think the sentimentality part, I mean, even though I'm not an expert, I feel like that's been around for some time. We can see that because Apple didn't allow you to say, the F word, even all this and I do want to ask something that when you were training Athena, were you training Athena from a man's perspective, from a woman's perspective? Because it was funny when they said, he said, just like you, my God. But there's something also to think about. When you're training AI, are you training it to be your gender or a different gender? Your race, your culture? Because that will matter to whoever is using it.
So I keep going back to education, right? I'm a trained ontological coach, which means I have spent years learning how to coach unbiased, So there is no gender basically when it comes to training and lecturing.
Everybody has some bias.
Yeah, but I was raised with 6 sisters, so my.
Again, your experiences of a man living with women.
Okay.
Right, so you cannot be able to train a female agent from a female perspective, no matter how well you think you know.
So going back to the point of human group and bias, right? I was not the only trainer. We have lots of actually experienced coaches, women who have been coaching for 40 years, and we had engaged them as well. Just to avoid bias.
And you can see the bias in the data. So this is one of the parameters, like male-female bias, right, in the data. You'll be training something with some data, and that's the source of all this biases, right? So LLMs have biases, yes, because the data has the bias, right? So you can analyze these data. There are some tools that will tell you, okay, this is biased towards a female or a male or a person with these characteristics or things like that, right? How accurate they are, that's another debate.
That was my question.
But yeah.
So I want to go back to your bias thing. It doesn't have to be a male or female training these systems. I don't know how many of you have actually read the Amazon case study a few years ago. Have you read? So I think they were attracting all female engineers. Can you believe it? How can you tell from the resume that you are male or female? There is no requirement of your gender on the resume. But what happened was, when the machine was getting trained, it was reading the resumes, and majority of the engineers were males, right? So the machine understood from the activities, because as a male, you may be participating in baseball, basketball, probably football, and women may be participating in other activities. So people who are actually providing their extracurricular activities, the machine realized that, okay, these are not good engineers because their resumes were not very, very good. And indirectly they were women, and they had to shut down that part.
And also names matter too, right? Like I think also not just the activities, and it's just picked up accidentally the names as well. But I think there's something to say, and I don't mean any disrespect to you, but I hear you two are very accomplished and experienced individuals, but you talk about AI and agents, talk about the human ego ourselves. And the fact that we're sitting here saying, hey, like, oh, I trained this, I built this, I know laws, right? We are putting that in there. So it's not the agent's fault, right? Even just the sheer ego of like, oh, I know what I'm doing, and I'm gonna fix this, I'm gonna solve, like, we have to also be mindful of how much we don't know when we're building something. And I'm guilty of that too, right? I always try to remind myself, like, I have to remind, I shouldn't act like I know everything.
Exactly, everybody is the same. That's why we engage multiple people. When you are training these systems, it took us 18 months to train Athena because we engaged so many coaches from all over the world, male, female, as well as people who were using it. So initially we released Athena and it was used by people from 70 countries. The beta user, right? And then we were actually gaining feedback, we send them service and everything. So totally agree with you. You have to make sure the bias is not there.
And that is the key to everything, right? The diversity spread is the key to everything.
Yeah. The question was about Athena. The purpose of Athena was basically, like you were saying, my strategy is about wellness, making people make better decisions. So we are building this multi-agentic system who is actually going to automate lots of monotonous activities. And when you're working with people, we are people, right? When you're working with people, there's a lot of conflict that can arise. Emotional issues are there, personal issues are there. A machine cannot make the decision like, should I terminate this person or not, just because he or she is having a bad day. And then if I'm having a bad day, and let's say you, my boss, I'm afraid of you, I don't want to come to you. Who should I talk to? So Athena is basically your personal assistant. She's there, and she's trained as a life coach who can help you navigate the difficult situations in your life and make suggestions. I won't even call them recommendation. She can make suggestions, hey, if you are having this conversation, probably this is the way to do it, right? Or if you are very, very angry, this tone is not the right tone to use. Or maybe sleep on it. So the idea was to improve human life.
I love that because 10 years ago, I wanted to build that same thing, and I named it Zoe. I love that you did that because I'm not trained in ML. I'm like, where am I going to get there? So I'm really glad that you built that, and you built it from a wellness perspective, and brought coaches in to do that, not like scientists to do that, right? Because it is about human connection and like. So I'm glad that you did that. I'm gonna have to try that.
You will.
Okay, let's open it up to the audience here.
We'll take one more question before, one or two more questions before we end.
Hi, I would have a question more about the interview process. And as you said, like we talked about all these developing tools like Google's ADK, OpenAI's Agents SDK, and LangChain, like all these different tools are coming out. When you look to hire engineers, are you testing more on tools, or are you going to talk more conceptual and see how they understand concepts and to build products? Or is it more about technical aspect for you guys?
My perspective can be very different from another interviewer's perspective. My perspective is very simple, right? So, and sometimes it's very difficult to understand. So I'll give you an example. When I took my first ever interview to hire someone. So I was back in India at the time, in Bombay, working for L&T Infotech. I was like 3 years of experience, very, very young. And my manager said, hey, Ron, you know all this Java stuff. So we need to hire a very experienced Java guy for our team who is going 2 levels higher than me. And I'm sitting as the interviewer, okay, with some of the senior management over there, right? So this guy comes over with 10 years of experience, much more than me, and so like, okay, so I've been given the chance to question this guy, and I grill him like crazy, right? So yes, I have a lot of Java knowledge. I can take him to JVMs, garbage collection. What are the problems with garbage collection? Threading inside your garbage collection. Because I have all this knowledge, I can grill him. Though he has 10 years of experience, he might not have the knowledge that I do in 3 years, right? So, so I grilled him for about 10 minutes, and he was sweating almost. And the manager said, yeah, I think we're done, Ron. Right? So that was my first interview. Went on for an hour until I was stopped, okay? Now, if I talk to someone, it's like more than 5 minutes. I'll know what they don't know. And it is not really so much to me anymore, what do you know? Are you interested in knowing? Is the question, especially in computer science, right? So things are evolving every so often. So ADK that I mentioned was released last week, right? So I have one of my very, very good students, Diptam. So he has already analyzed it, and I know whether I'll take the ADK route or not, right? So that is where we have to get to, right? That's whom I would like to hire, right? Because things evolve, we have to go research, find out new ways of doing things, and you have to take a decision. I will take the decision, but I need someone who can do all this analysis, because I can't do it all by myself, right?
So you know, when we hire, there's a reason that we have multiple rounds of interviews, right? Because we have people who will be doing your technical stuff like and you have people who will look for your cultural fit. Can you be a good fit for my organization? Because I have friends who are extremely smart. They go to Google's and Apple's, and then they get rejected like from a very, very common company. So, and the most important thing is your soft skills and your ability to solve problems. Because when you hire people, it is highly likely by the time you start your job, whatever you have learned in school is gone. Okay? So, learn about interacting with people, your soft skills, and then ability to solve problems. Because I have people on my team who have zero knowledge of coding, but they can build an MVP within an hour, literally, thanks to co-pilots and replicated anchors.
Any other questions from the audience?
And you guys can connect with us on LinkedIn if you have further questions.
Any more questions?
Did you have a question?
I think yes.
Right.
Hi, so I had a question about how like the work structure, like job role of people will change. Like right now it's people like ADA agents, but once AI agent becomes a norm in almost every other industry, how do you think the role of a software engineer or like a AI engineer will change?
Okay, so let me tell you this. Everything in the computer world lives in a bubble, right? We are in the agentic bubble now.
Yeah.
Everyone's chasing after agents, okay? My prediction about this bubble is 3 years, okay? After 3 years, there's gonna be something else, okay? But, and we'll be solving many of these complex problems that I was referring to, right? Bridging the gap and putting enterprise quality code in production. We would have probably solved these problems by 3 years, okay? And then some other bubble will come. So we were in the dot-com boom when I started working with computers. We were in the, Y2K problem. I love doing R&D stuff. So we used to, I had a small team in India, and we were always scared of getting involved with a Y2K problem, because that's a boring problem to solve. We know what the answer is, and it's just mundane stuff you have to do. So yes, that's where things are. Are you graduating soon, or?
Oh yeah, in May.
Okay, so you're in the bubble. Okay, so learn about agents. That's gonna be very, very attractive to people who are hiring. Learn about LLMs. That's the bubble we're in. Okay, that's not the end of the world. We'll be in another bubble soon.
I'll say something.
So, as you know, technology evolves and then it makes it easier for you to build stuff, right? So if you can focus on system thinking, how these large systems will work, design thinking, how do you design the systems, and user-centered, design like UCI, user-centered interface. Those are the skills that we will need in order to make these agents useful. Otherwise, these agents are just as good as writing code. They cannot in the human aspect in there. So in the future, I think people who have a lot of experience, like 20, 30, 40 years of experience, they will be employed to train these systems, because these are all expert systems. And people like you who are very, very smart with coding and everything, your job will be to actually work in collaboration with these things, because at the end of the day, they will be more just like a spreadsheet to you that we have to use.
One thing I do want to say that we've seen a big, almost like an explosion of engineers, AI engineers, jumping into law with their product. You know how to code, you know how to build an agent, but you don't know the subject matter. And it's happening in every industry. What it's doing is diluting the technology. People, it's confusing the user base. And I get hit up once a week by some engineer, somebody from India, or somebody who's doing a program here and say, hey, I built this app, it's for law. Can you validate it? Can you look at it and tell me, can you help me sell it? And I find it quite irritating, but I can understand the ambition, right? So my advice to you is, as you're learning this, find a subject that you like and learn about that. Become more aware of, if you want to build something for contracts, go learn contracts, take some law classes. Or if you want to do it in health, don't just build a solution and find a problem for it, right? So no matter if you're working for a startup or a big company, or I think the great thing about technology is that, when you know how to build something, you have this inside you, I'm going to build something of my own. But you can build it for practice, but if you really wanted to do something, you should know who the user is, what problem it's solving, and that's really where it's going to be useful. So the people with the 20, 30 years of experience learn that lesson, and that's why they're sitting there. But if you want to cover that gap, don't just build products and then find the problem. Look for a problem, understand it, understand how many people have that problem, right? Maybe 2 people have that problem. And then I think that's where you can create the value, differentiate yourself and your products when you talk to somebody who's going to help you sell that product.
I just want to add one more thing that people like us, people who are tech, we always aspire to build stuff like you said, and everybody wants to start a startup. I think the biggest advice that I have learned from somebody is Sir Richard Branson, who owns Virgin Groups and everything. He has said, if there's a problem that bothers you a lot, do something about it. That's your idea right there. So if something is irritating you, create something for it. And then there will be people who use it.
Definitely, that's a really holistic perspective and like a well-rounded one that we have gone through over the discussion. I'd like to ask, before we wind up for the event, what is one key takeaway that you guys think the audience should leave with today?
Hey, you already mentioned we're in the agency bubble. Yeah, learn about agents. If you're a technical guy, just if you have any questions, just connect with me on LinkedIn, and we can go through some of the stuff. As Ron was saying, learn the domain also. If you're building a product, you gotta know the domain. I would also mention design thinking. There's a very big thing in design thinking element called empathy, right? Yeah. So if you cannot empathize with your user, you cannot build something for the user that is useful for the user, right? You can try to, but that's why you have sponsor users, right? So Roma was saying, right, rather than just shooting some message to Roma or someone, make them a sponsor user. That way they have some stake in the game to build the product with you, and they can tell you, you can learn about the stuff. Like I dabble in astronomy, so I was telling you something about astronomy. I will dabble in legal if I build a legal product. But I still need experts to guide me through the process. I cannot be expert in every. About agents, it's the same thing. One agent cannot solve every problem. So the way agents will work is delegation of functionality from one agent to another agent, like human beings do. So that is how we'll have agentic frameworks. We'll have hierarchical models of agentic frameworks. Exactly how human beings have a structure, and someone delegates to someone else, right?
I would say that don't just build things that can do things. Also think about building things that can stop things. Think about the checks and balances. If we are concerned about bias in AI, then maybe build something that can detect bias in AI. So everybody's in this race right now to explore and build as much as they can for what they have, but maybe think about things, building things that are going to balance things.
Like responsible AI, right? So I think I had just one thing for you guys know. Like obviously technology, I grew up with technology too. There were always times they were so afraid. So don't be afraid of AGI. It's just like literally just another way of automation. Many people say AGI is going to come and change the world. It will not. It You guys will learn the technology, you will build it, and you will make life better. So just don't be afraid of technology. Any new technology comes your way, adapt. Adapt and then keep moving.
That was really interesting, and leaving the event, some of the key takeaways that you guys mentioned would be definitely something that should be in our minds when we're working on projects of our own. I believe that it was a really fun, interesting conversation that we had. I really enjoyed going on all those different tangents with you guys, and we had a really interesting couple of questions from the audience as well. So I'd like to wind up by saying thank you all for being here. We've gone from enterprise infrastructure to human wellness, from legal automation to emerging AI behavior, and hopefully this has sparked a lot more questions than we've answered, which is exactly the point of this discussion. A huge thanks to our panel right here. A round of applause for them. Thanks for sharing not just their expertise, but their vision for how we build and live with intelligent agents. If you want to continue the conversation, they'll be around afterwards for a little bit, or you can find them online in LinkedIn like Ron mentioned. Whether you're a developer, researcher, student, or just curious, your questions and ideas will shape how technology grows. Keep asking, building, and challenging. Thank you all.